King's Guard show powerful
It's a
respect to
fine
Old
day
Guard
for a
veterans.
walk around the grounds.
A quiet stillness hung in the
Indeed,
air,
the
broken
architecture
only by the
always
soft
impresses me.
rustle of leaves and the distant clatter of boots against the cobblestones. Inside the royal barracks, the young guards were already awake, moving with precision and purpose as they prepared for the morning inspection. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of anticipation and quiet pride, for today was not like any other day. Captain Adrian, a man in his early 30s, stood in front of the ranks of the King's Guard, his posture straight, chest out, and eyes sharp. He had always believed in the importance of discipline and the power of example. His uniform, always spotless, reflected the sunlight in a crisp, metallic gleam. As he walked slowly along the line of soldiers, his gaze was exacting but not harsh. He knew that every move mattered, every glance carried weight, and every soldier watched him as much as he watched them. Today, however, there was an added layer of tension. A special guest was expected, an old Guard veteran whose name carried almost legendary weight among the guards, Sergeant Major Thomas. Thomas had been retired for more than 20 years, yet stories of his service were still told with reverence. He was a man who had seen countless battles, faced danger without hesitation, and led with a combination of strict discipline and quiet wisdom. His name alone inspired respect, not out of fear, but from admiration for his courage, his fairness, and his unwavering loyalty. Though the younger guards had never met him in person, they had grown up hearing tales of his achievements and the profound impact he had made on the King's Guard. Today, they would finally see him in the flesh. The guards straightened their ranks as a hush fell over the courtyard. The polished boots clicked in perfect rhythm against the stones, and the sharp angles of their shoulders created a visual symmetry that spoke of years of training. Yet beneath the outward calm, a sense of nervous energy buzzed quietly among the men and women. They wanted to impress, to honor the man who had shaped the history of the very force they served. Captain Adrian felt this energy too, a mixture of pride and apprehension, and he knew he had to lead not only with precision but also with heart. Finally, the moment came. A carriage approached the palace gates, its wheels crunching softly over the gravel path. The guards watched silently as the doors opened, revealing Sergeant Major Thomas. Though age had softened his features, his posture remained upright, his movements deliberate and measured. The uniform he wore was slightly faded but immaculately kept, adorned with medals and insignias that told stories of bravery, sacrifice, and decades of service. He carried himself not as a man seeking recognition, but as one who had earned it through a lifetime of dedication. As Thomas stepped onto the courtyard, a subtle ripple of respect moved through the ranks. The younger guards instinctively straightened their backs and lifted their chins, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and nervous anticipation. Even the seasoned officers felt a twinge of humility, aware that they were in the presence of someone who had shaped the very traditions they upheld. Captain Adrian walked forward, meeting the veteran with a nod of acknowledgement. Though words were few, the gesture carried a depth of respect that spoke louder than any speech could. Thomas surveyed the formation quietly, his eyes moving deliberately from one guard to the next. He did not speak immediately, yet his presence seemed to weigh heavily in the air, a silent command that demanded focus and excellence. The young guards felt the intensity of his gaze, recognizing that this was more than a routine inspection. It was a meeting of past and present, a moment when the legacy of the old guard intersected with the future of those who would carry on their mission. Captain Adrian took a deep breath and began the morning inspection. He moved slowly down the line, observing every detail: the alignment of the soldiers, the sharpness of their movements, the precision of their drills. Every mistake, no matter how small, was an opportunity to improve, and he knew that Thomas's presence elevated the stakes. Yet as he glanced at the veteran, he realized something remarkable. Thomas's eyes were not critical or judgmental. They were assessing, yes, but with a gentle wisdom that seemed to say, "I see your effort, your dedication, your potential." It was a reminder that true respect was not about fault-finding, but about recognizing commitment and guiding improvement. The young guards felt a mix of pressure and inspiration. One by one, they performed their drills, hands steady, movements precise, breathing measured. Some stumbled slightly under the weight of expectation, but Thomas did not react with anger or disappointment. Instead, he nodded subtly to those who excelled and offered encouraging gestures to those who faltered. His presence was both formidable and comforting, a paradox that left the guards both in awe and at ease. Captain Adrian could feel the pride swelling within him. Leading this formation in the presence of such a legendary figure was a responsibility he did not take lightly. He knew that every step, every motion, and every decision he made reflected not only on himself, but on the entire guard. As he walked alongside Thomas, he felt a silent understanding pass between them. This was a shared commitment to excellence, a bridge between generations, and a living lesson in the power of respect and discipline. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the courtyard. The guards continued their drills, the rhythm of their movements creating a symphony of discipline and dedication. Birds chirped in the gardens, seemingly in harmony with the soldiers' cadence, and the air was filled with a sense of history being honored and tradition being upheld. It was a quiet but powerful moment, a reminder that the essence of the King's Guard was not only in the weapons they carried or the formations they executed, but in the values they embodied: honor, loyalty, courage, and respect. As the drill came to an end, Thomas took a few steps forward, his hands clasped behind his back. His gaze swept over the formation one last time, lingering just enough to leave a lasting impression on each guard. Captain Adrian watched as the young soldiers stood at attention, hearts pounding but spirits lifted. In that instant, the courtyard was transformed from a place of routine practice into a living testament to the power of legacy and mentorship. For Captain Adrian, the morning was more than a drill. It was a profound lesson in leadership and humility. He realized that discipline was not merely about perfection, but about respect for the rules, for the people, and for those who had walked the path before. Thomas's presence reminded him that every guard, no matter how young or inexperienced, had the potential to grow, to learn, and to honor the tradition they were part of. As the veteran prepared to leave the courtyard, Captain Adrian stepped forward and offered a respectful bow, a gesture that was quietly mirrored by the entire formation. Thomas returned the gesture with a faint smile, a nod of approval that felt like a benediction. The guards felt a surge of pride and inspiration, knowing that they had participated in something meaningful, something that connected them to a history larger than themselves. The morning concluded not with fanfare or applause, but with a deep, shared sense of accomplishment. The young guards returned to their duties with renewed focus, carrying with them the memory of the old guard veteran and the lessons he had silently imparted. Captain Adrian lingered for a moment, watching Thomas's carriage disappear down the palace path, and felt a quiet gratitude. He knew that this encounter would stay with him and his team for years, shaping not only their skills but their understanding of honor, respect, and the enduring power of legacy. The day after the veteran's visit, a quiet buzz still lingered among the King's Guard. The memory of Sergeant Major Thomas walking through the ranks, nodding at each guard with quiet approval, had left a deep impression. Captain Adrian, still replaying the veteran's expressions in his mind, felt a new sense of responsibility. Today was different. Today, the guards were not just performing for the routine morning drill, they were performing for history itself, and for the standard that Thomas had set with his life of service. As the sun slowly rose over the palace walls, the guards assembled in the courtyard. There was a strange mix of excitement and tension in the air. The younger guards whispered softly among themselves, sharing stories they had heard of Thomas's legendary courage, imagining the battles he had faced and the lessons he had learned. They wanted to prove themselves, to honor the legacy, but there was also a quiet fear of failing in front of someone who had shaped the very traditions they had sworn to uphold. Captain Adrian moved through the formation, inspecting uniforms, straightening lines, and offering gentle encouragement to the nervous recruits. He could sense the energy building, a mixture of pride, anticipation, and pressure. He knew that the real test was not about perfection in drills alone, but about how the guards would handle the presence of someone whose standards were legendary. Adrian paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, reminding himself that leadership was not about intimidation. It was about inspiration. Word had spread that Thomas would be observing the morning exercises again. Though retired, he had agreed to return for this special visit, and this knowledge added weight to every step, every salute, and every movement of the King's Guard. When Thomas appeared at the gate, he moved with the same calm dignity as the day before. His uniform, though slightly faded by time, carried the quiet authority of experience, decorated with medals and insignias earned through decades of faithful service. As he entered the courtyard, a wave of respect swept through the ranks. The guards instinctively straightened, their breaths even eyes forward, their hearts quietly racing with anticipation. Thomas did not rush. He walked slowly along the perimeter, his eyes observing every detail. The alignment of the soldiers, the precision of their steps, the focus in their expressions. Every movement was measured, deliberate, and purposeful. His presence alone seemed to demand the highest standard of discipline. The younger guards felt both awe and nervousness. Some wondered if they would be able to live up to the expectations of someone who had once led the finest soldiers in the kingdom through situations that none of them could even imagine. Captain Adrian felt the weight of the moment pressing upon him. Leading his team under normal circumstances was one thing, but with Thomas observing, the stakes felt higher. He walked the line, silently encouraging the guards, reminding them that confidence and composure were as important as technique. The veterans in the formation, though experienced, were also aware of the symbolic significance of the visit. Thomas represented the highest ideals of the King's Guard, and even a small mistake might seem magnified under his watchful gaze. The drill began. Soldiers marched in perfect synchronization, their boots striking the stones with a steady rhythm that echoed across the courtyard. Their movements were sharp, precise, and disciplined. Yet, despite the hours of practice, human error is never fully eliminated. A young recruit, barely 19, stumbled slightly while turning, his balance momentarily faltering. His face flushed with embarrassment, and he froze, unsure whether to continue or apologize. For a brief moment, the entire formation seemed to falter, the rhythm disrupted, and a hush fell over the courtyard. Captain Adrian's heart skipped a beat. He knew that mistakes were inevitable, yet the fear of appearing incompetent in front of Thomas was real. The veteran, however, did not react with anger or criticism. Instead, he stopped, his eyes locking on the young recruit, and with a subtle nod and a gentle smile, encouraged him to continue. The unspoken message was clear. Perfection was not the goal. Effort, resilience, and learning from mistakes were far more important. Inspired by this silent guidance, the recruit regained his composure, completing the movement with renewed confidence. The moment was small but powerful. The guards watched closely, realizing that true strength was not in flawless execution, but in the ability to maintain focus and dignity under pressure. Thomas's calm, deliberate response set an example that resonated deeply with the entire formation. Even the most experienced guards felt a quiet reassurance, understanding that leadership and respect were more about encouragement than punishment, more about guidance than criticism. Captain Adrian walked alongside Thomas as the drill continued. He could feel the veteran's eyes on the formation, but he also sensed the warmth beneath the gaze. Thomas was not there to embarrass or judge. He was there to inspire, to teach, and to remind the guards of the values that had made the King's Guard legendary. Each step, each salute, and each coordinated movement became more than a demonstration of skill. They became a tribute to the principles of honor, loyalty, and perseverance that Thomas embodied. As the drill progressed, the guards began to move with renewed energy and confidence. Mistakes were no longer seen as failures, but as opportunities to improve and learn. Thomas's presence had shifted the atmosphere from tension to determination. Even the youngest recruits, who had initially been nervous and uncertain, found themselves moving with purpose, their heads held high, their movements deliberate and confident. The courtyard seemed to come alive with the rhythm of disciplined effort and inspired hearts. At one point, Thomas paused at the center of the formation. His presence alone commanded attention, but he did not speak immediately. Instead, he observed the guards, taking note of their focus, their determination, and their commitment to the legacy they represented. Captain Adrian noticed a subtle change in the energy of the group. The guards seemed to stand taller, their expressions sharper, their movements more fluid. It was as if Thomas's silent guidance had awakened a deeper sense of pride and responsibility within them. Then, in a quiet but powerful moment, Thomas stepped forward and addressed the formation. His voice, calm yet resonant, carried across the courtyard. He spoke not of mistakes or faults, but of dedication, courage, and the importance of carrying forward the legacy of the King's Guard. His words were simple, yet they struck a chord with every soldier present. He reminded them that their service was not only about drills and ceremonies, but about protecting the kingdom, honoring those who had come before, and inspiring those who would follow. The guards listened intently, absorbing every word. Captain Adrian felt a wave of gratitude and admiration for the veteran. This was more than an inspection. It was a lesson in character, in leadership, and in the quiet power of respect. Thomas's presence had transformed the ordinary morning drill into a defining moment for the entire formation. The guards realized that the true measure of their worth was not only in their skills, but in their ability to uphold values, inspire others, and learn from those who had paved the way. As the drill came to an end, Thomas approached Captain Adrian. The veteran extended his hand, and Adrian shook it firmly, feeling a surge of pride and humility. There were no grand speeches, no accolades, just a quiet acknowledgement of effort and dedication. Thomas's eyes met Adrian's, and in that simple glance, a silent understanding passed between them. The values of the King's Guard were alive, strong, and being carried forward by capable hands. The guards stood at attention as Thomas slowly walked to the edge of the courtyard, his presence leaving an imprint of inspiration that would remain long after he departed. Captain Adrian took a deep breath, looking over his team. He knew that today had changed them, not just as soldiers, but as people. The experience had shown them the importance of courage, discipline, respect, and the quiet power of guidance from those who had walked the path before. By the time Thomas left the palace grounds, the sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Yet, despite the ordinary beauty of the morning, the guards felt a sense of extraordinary accomplishment. They had witnessed something rare and meaningful, a connection between generations, a living example of leadership, and a reminder that honor is not only about skill but about character. Captain Adrian gathered the guards together after the veteran departed. He spoke to them not as a commander enforcing rules, but as a mentor celebrating growth. He reminded them of the lesson they had learned. Mistakes were not failures, effort mattered more than perfection, and respect and dedication created the foundation for greatness. The young recruits listened intently, inspired not only by Thomas's presence, but also by Adrian's ability to guide and encourage them. The courtyard, now quiet again, carried an air of reflection. The guards returned to their daily routines with a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that their service was part of something much larger than themselves. Captain Adrian lingered for a moment, watching them, knowing that today's experience had shaped the course of their journey as protectors of the kingdom. It was a day they would remember forever, a day when the past and the present had come together to teach a lesson in courage, respect, and the enduring power of legacy. After the veteran's second visit, a quiet tension settled over the King's Guard. The courtyard was filled with a strange energy, part pride, part anxiety. Captain Adrian noticed it immediately. Though the soldiers had performed admirably in front of Sergeant Major Thomas, the experience had left some of them shaken. The young recruits, especially, were struggling to reconcile their pride with the pressure they had felt. They had learned that excellence was not just about skill or precision, but also about maintaining composure under scrutiny. This realization, while inspiring, also brought with it the weight of responsibility. Captain Adrian moved through the barracks in the early morning, observing his team as they prepared for the day's routine. He could see the strain on some faces, tight jaws, nervous glances, and shoulders held too rigidly. The young recruits were eager to prove themselves again, but the memory of the veteran's gaze lingered, creating an almost paralyzing fear of failure. Adrian understood this feeling well. He had experienced it himself when he was a young guard, first facing the judgment of the old guard. He knew that this struggle was a natural part of growth, but he also knew it could be overwhelming if not addressed with care and guidance. The day began with standard drills, but the mood was different. The rhythm of marching and turning, which usually came easily, now seemed heavier. Soldiers hesitated slightly, their movements less fluid than before. Captain Adrian noticed small mistakes that would normally go unnoticed. Arms swinging slightly off angle, feet landing unevenly, eyes flicking nervously to their peers. Even the seasoned officers were affected, though their experience allowed them to mask it better. Adrian knew that Thomas's presence had left an invisible pressure on everyone, and it would take more than physical drills to relieve it. During a break, a group of young recruits gathered near the fountain, whispering nervously. One of them, a boy named Leo, voiced the concern that hung in everyone's mind. "I want to do everything perfectly," he said, his voice small but earnest. "But I'm afraid I'll fail again if someone important is watching." "How do we handle it?" His eyes darted to Captain Adrian, silently asking for guidance. Adrian knelt down to meet Leo at eye level, his voice calm and reassuring. "You don't have to be perfect," he said. "Even Sergeant Major Thomas knows that mistakes happen. What matters is how you respond. Courage is not about never falling, it's about getting up every time you do." Leo nodded slowly, absorbing the words, but the nervous tension did not leave completely. It was clear that the struggle the recruits faced was more than just physical. It was mental and emotional. The pressure to live up to the legacy of the old guard weighed heavily on them. They had been inspired by Thomas's calm guidance and his subtle encouragement, but now they were left alone with their own expectations, and the burden felt heavier than any drill or parade could be. Captain Adrian knew that the best way to help them was through action. He organized exercises that tested not only their precision, but also their composure. Soldiers were asked to perform under challenging conditions, carrying heavy equipment, navigating complex formations, and even executing commands without spoken guidance. Every mistake was treated as a learning opportunity, every success as a building block for confidence. The young guards began to understand that struggle was part of growth, and that resilience was just as important as skill. Even the most confident soldiers experienced moments of doubt. One recruit, Myra, who had always been steady and reliable, stumbled during a particularly complex drill. She dropped her sword, the metal clanging loudly against the stone courtyard. For a moment, silence fell. She froze, expecting criticism or disappointment. Instead, Captain Adrian approached her with a nod of encouragement. "Mistakes are lessons," he said quietly. "Your dedication matters more than the sword in your hand." Mara took a deep breath and tried again, this time executing the drill flawlessly. Her relief was palpable, and the other recruits watched closely, learning silently from her example. As the day progressed, the emotional struggle became more evident. Soldiers were physically exhausted, but the real challenge was internal. They wrestled with self-doubt, fear of judgment, and the desire to prove themselves worthy of the legacy they had been entrusted with. Captain Adrian observed them closely, offering guidance, encouragement, and support whenever necessary. He reminded them constantly that strength was not measured by flawless execution, but by perseverance, integrity, and the willingness to improve. By mid-afternoon, the sun hung high over the courtyard, casting long shadows on the polished stones. The guards continued their drills, now with a deeper understanding of the lessons Thomas had imparted. They learned to focus not on the fear of failure, but on the discipline of effort and the clarity of purpose. Adrian noticed that even small successes brought moments of joy and relief, strengthening the bond between the soldiers and reinforcing their collective spirit. Yet the struggle was not only personal, it was also collective. When one guard faltered, it affected the rhythm and confidence of the entire formation. Captain Adrian encouraged teamwork, reminding them that supporting each other was as important as individual skill. Soldiers began to step in for one another, offering quiet words of reassurance, helping their peers correct mistakes, and celebrating small victories together. The atmosphere, once heavy with tension, gradually shifted toward one of unity, resilience, and shared determination. In the late afternoon, Adrian gathered the guards in the courtyard for a reflective session. He spoke to them not as a commander giving orders, but as a mentor addressing students of life. "Today has been difficult," he said gently, "and that is exactly why it matters. Every challenge you face, every mistake you make, is a step toward becoming a better soldier and a stronger person. The struggle is what prepares you for the responsibilities you will carry in the future." The soldiers listened intently, realizing that struggle was not a sign of weakness, but a path to growth. The young recruits, in particular, began to understand that their feelings of nervousness and self-doubt were natural. Captain Adrian shared stories from his own early days in the Guard, including moments when he had felt unworthy of Thomas's approval, and how he had overcome those fears through perseverance and focus. His honesty resonated deeply, showing the recruits that even the strongest leaders had faced similar struggles. By evening, the guards were tired but transformed. Their muscles ached, their feet were sore, but their minds were clearer and their hearts steadier. They had faced the internal challenge of self-doubt, learned to support one another, and begun to internalize the lessons of resilience, courage, and humility. Captain Adrian watched them with quiet pride, knowing that these struggles were necessary for their growth, and that the experience would shape their character far more than any simple drill ever could. As the sun dipped below the palace walls, casting the courtyard in shades of orange and gold, Captain Adrian reflected on the day. He knew that the visit of Sergeant Major Thomas had been more than a simple inspection. It had been a catalyst, igniting both aspiration and challenge in the hearts of the guards. Today, the soldiers had learned that struggle was not something to avoid, but something to embrace. The fear, doubt, and tension they had experienced were all part of the process of becoming not only skilled guards but honorable and resilient individuals. The day ended quietly. The guards returned to the barracks, tired yet invigorated. Conversations were softer now, filled with reflection rather than nerves. They shared lessons learned, small victories, and moments of courage, realizing that the journey toward excellence was ongoing. Captain Adrian walked among them, offering gentle encouragement and guidance, reinforcing the idea that struggle, when approached with dedication and integrity, could become a source of strength. That night, as the guards rested, the memory of the veterans' calm and encouraging presence lingered in their minds. They understood that the challenges they faced today were not obstacles to be feared, but opportunities to grow, learn, and honor the legacy of the King's Guard. Captain Adrian, watching over the barracks, felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. He knew that the struggles his team had faced would leave a lasting impression, shaping not only their abilities but their character and understanding of true leadership. Through this day of struggle, the guards began to realize that service was not only about physical skill or flawless execution. It was about resilience, humility, teamwork, and the courage to face challenges head-on. The lessons of Thomas's presence had been subtle yet profound. True strength was born in struggle, and the measure of a soldier was not in avoiding mistakes, but in how they responded to them with honor, determination, and respect. By the end of Part 3, the young guards had experienced a transformative day. They had faced their fears, embraced their struggles, and emerged stronger. Captain Adrian knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he also knew that his team was learning the most important lesson of all. That struggle was not the enemy, it was the teacher. The morning sun rose over the palace courtyard, painting the stone walls with a soft, golden glow. The air was crisp, and a gentle breeze rustled through the gardens, carrying with it a sense of anticipation. Captain Adrian stood at the head of the formation, watching the guards assemble with a careful eye. The previous day had been filled with struggle, doubt, and reflection, and today he knew the true test of character awaited them. This was not about drills, not about precision. It was about choice. The guards had learned much from the presence of Sergeant Major Thomas. They had faced their fears, corrected mistakes, and begun to understand the meaning of resilience and honor. Yet, Adrian sensed that the young soldiers were searching for something more. They wanted to show not just skill, but loyalty, courage, and respect, the qualities that had made Thomas a legendary figure in the history of the King's Guard. Today, he would give them the opportunity to do so. Captain Adrian had planned a special exercise, one that required not only technical skill but also initiative, leadership, and the ability to make decisions under pressure. He explained the scenario carefully. "Today, you will act as a team," he said. "You will face situations that require judgment, cooperation, and courage. This is your chance to show that you can rise to the standards set before you, not just in drills, but in character and action." The young guards listened attentively, the weight of responsibility reflected in their eyes. The first challenge involved a complex formation. The guards were instructed to perform a series of maneuvers, but with a twist. Certain commands would come unexpectedly, requiring them to adapt quickly while maintaining coordination. For the younger soldiers, this was daunting. Their minds raced as they tried to anticipate the next move, recalling the lessons from the previous day. The fear of making a mistake still lingered, But so did the memory of Thomas's calm encouragement, which reminded them that effort and composure mattered more than perfection. Captain Adrian observed the formation closely. At first, mistakes occurred. Guards hesitated, misread commands, or faltered slightly in timing. Yet instead of frustration, Adrian saw determination. Each soldier corrected their errors, communicated quietly with their peers, and worked to restore harmony within the formation. The young recruits began to understand that decision-making was as important as discipline. They realized that leadership could emerge not only from rank, but from initiative, teamwork, and thoughtful action. Amidst this exercise, Captain Adrian introduced a symbolic gesture. He instructed the guards to prepare for a ceremonial acknowledgement of Sergeant Major Thomas, who would soon return to the courtyard. The gesture was simple but profound. The guards would show respect in a way that reflected their growth, understanding, and recognition of his legacy. Yet the question remained, how would they perform this act of respect? Would they follow tradition blindly, or would they allow their own experience and understanding to shape a meaningful expression? The young guards whispered among themselves, sharing ideas and concerns. Leo, who had struggled with self-doubt the previous day, spoke with quiet confidence. "We should do it with sincerity," he said. "It's not about looking perfect. It's about showing that we understand what he stood for and that we respect him for it." His words resonated with the others. Slowly, a plan formed. They would honor Thomas not just with ceremonial gestures, but with gestures that reflected the values they had learned: respect, humility, and unity. Captain Adrian watched silently, letting the soldiers develop their approach. He knew that the true test of leadership was not in issuing orders, but in allowing his team to make thoughtful decisions and take responsibility for their actions. The guards practiced their movements carefully, coordinating their positions and refining their expressions, ensuring that each gesture conveyed genuine respect. The tension in the courtyard was palpable, but it was mixed with excitement and anticipation, a testament to the journey they had undergone. Soon, Sergeant Major Thomas entered the courtyard. The veteran's presence immediately drew the attention of every guard. His uniform, still immaculate, reflected the morning sunlight. His eyes scanned the formation with quiet authority, yet there was a subtle warmth in his gaze, a recognition of effort and dedication. The young soldiers, now prepared for the ceremonial acknowledgement, took their positions. Their movements were deliberate, careful, and heartfelt, reflecting not only their training but their understanding of the legacy they honored. Captain Adrian gave a subtle signal. The formation executed the ceremonial gesture they had planned, a coordinated series of bows, salutes, and synchronized movements, each designed to show respect and admiration. It was precise yet personal, disciplined yet sincere. Thomas watched silently, his expression calm, yet a faint smile began to form on his face. The young guards felt a surge of pride and relief. They had not only performed well, but they had chosen to express respect in a way that reflected their growth and understanding. The veteran stepped forward, his eyes meeting those of Captain Adrian and the young recruits. "You have learned well," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Not because you avoided mistakes, but because you chose to act with integrity, courage, and respect. This is the true measure of a soldier." The words resonated deeply, and the guards felt the weight and honor of the acknowledgement. They had made a critical choice, not only in planning their gestures, but in embracing the lessons of struggle, perseverance, and leadership that had guided them to this moment. Captain Adrian felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He knew that this experience was more than a ceremonial gesture. It was a defining moment for his team. The soldiers had faced their fears, confronted their doubts, and made a conscious decision to act with sincerity and honor. They had learned that leadership was not just about following orders, but about thinking, deciding, and taking responsibility for meaningful actions. As the ceremony concluded, Thomas approached the formation. He shook hands with the young guards, offering quiet words of encouragement to each one. His presence, though calm, carried immense authority and inspiration. The guards realized that their decision to act thoughtfully, sincerely, and with unity had made a lasting impression. They had not only honored the veteran, but had also honored themselves, their team, and the values of the King's Guard. After Thomas departed, the guards remained in the courtyard, reflecting on the experience. Captain Adrian gathered them together, speaking with the calm authority that had guided them through struggle and growth. "Today, you made a choice," he said. "A choice to act with respect, integrity, and courage. That choice defines who you are, not just as soldiers, but as people. Remember this feeling and let it guide you in every action you take, both on duty and in life." The young soldiers listened intently, understanding that this decision was a turning point in their journey. The day continued with regular drills and routines, yet the atmosphere had changed. The guards moved with greater confidence, their steps measured not only by training, but by purpose. They supported one another more naturally, anticipating needs and offering encouragement. Even when small mistakes occurred, they corrected them calmly, remembering the lessons of struggle and the importance of their choices. The experience had instilled a sense of self-assurance that was grounded in respect, discipline, and thoughtful action. By evening, the courtyard was quiet once again, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. Captain Adrian walked among his guards, observing their interactions, listening to their reflections, and offering guidance where needed. He knew that today had been a turning point in their development. They had faced internal and external challenges, and through conscious decision-making, had chosen to rise above fear and doubt. The lessons they had learned were profound. That respect is earned through sincerity, that courage is measured by thoughtful action, and that leadership is expressed through both example and choice. As the soldiers prepared to retire for the evening, a sense of accomplishment and quiet pride lingered in the air. They had not only performed drills or executed movements, they had made meaningful decisions, demonstrated character, and honored the legacy of the King's Guard in a way that was uniquely their own. Captain Adrian reflected on the day with satisfaction, knowing that the growth his team had achieved would stay with them forever. The experience had shown that the true test of a soldier was not in following commands perfectly, but in choosing to act with honor, courage, and respect in every moment. The night fell over the palace, the courtyard empty except for the soft glow of lanterns. Captain Adrian stood silently for a moment, reflecting on the journey of the past days. The struggle, the lessons, and the decisions had all led to this moment of understanding. He knew that the guards had learned more than drills. They had learned the essence of what it meant to serve, to respect, and to lead. And in that understanding, the legacy of Sergeant Major Thomas lived on, not only in memory, but in the hearts and actions of the next generation of the King's Guard. The morning after the special exercise began with a quiet energy in the palace courtyard. The King's Guard moved with a calm confidence that had not been seen before. There was a rhythm to their steps, a unity in their movements, and a sense of purpose that came not only from training but from understanding. The experience with Sergeant Major Thomas had left a lasting mark on each soldier, shaping their approach to discipline, respect, and teamwork. Captain Adrian observed them closely, feeling a quiet pride in their transformation. The courtyard was alive with a sense of accomplishment. The guards had faced challenges, struggled with self-doubt, and learned to make critical decisions with care and sincerity. Each recruit now carried a new understanding. That true strength was measured not by flawless performance, but by the ability to act with integrity, courage, and respect. The lessons of the past days were becoming visible in their actions, in the way they moved, saluted, and supported one another. The training grounds had become more than a place for drills. They were now a living classroom for character and leadership. Captain Adrian gathered his team together for the morning briefing. He spoke to them with calm authority, but also with warmth. "You have learned much in the past days," he said. "You have faced challenges that tested your skill, your focus, and your courage. But the most important lessons have been about respect, integrity, and unity. These are qualities that will guide you not only as guards, but as people who serve and protect." The soldiers listened intently, absorbing the message and feeling the truth in his words. As they continued their morning exercises, the impact of Thomas's visit became even more evident. The guards moved with a quiet confidence, anticipating each command and supporting one another seamlessly. When a recruit stumbled or hesitated, another would offer a word of encouragement or a steadying hand. The previous tension and fear of failure had been replaced by mutual trust and the knowledge that every mistake was a step toward growth. The young soldiers began to take pride not just in themselves, but in their team, understanding that success was shared and challenges were met together. The veteran's influence extended beyond the courtyard. Stories of his guidance and the lessons he had imparted spread among the guards. They spoke of his calm presence, his wisdom, and the quiet authority he commanded without harshness or fear. Each guard reflected on their own experience, realizing that Thomas had taught them more than discipline. He had shown them the power of mentorship, the importance of humility, and the value of learning from those who came before. Captain Adrian encouraged these reflections, knowing that understanding the lessons deeply would make them stronger, more thoughtful guards. In the days that followed, the guards found themselves applying these lessons in every aspect of their duties. Simple routines, such as patrolling the palace grounds or maintaining equipment, became opportunities to demonstrate focus, respect, and teamwork. They carried themselves with an awareness of the legacy they represented, and their interactions with one another became more considerate and supportive. Even small gestures, a nod of encouragement, a helping hand, a word of praise, were influenced by the guidance of the old guard veteran. The spirit of service, discipline, and respect had become a living part of their daily routine. Captain Adrian observed these changes with quiet satisfaction. He knew that the true impact of Thomas's visit could not be measured in a single drill or ceremony. It was in the way the guards carried themselves, in the choices they made, and in the strength of their unity. The lessons of struggle, decision-making, and integrity had taken root, creating a foundation for not only their current performance, but for the future of the King's Guard. Adrian felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that his role as a leader had been to guide, inspire, and support this growth. One afternoon, Captain Adrian called the guards together for a reflective session in the courtyard. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers from the gardens. He spoke to them not as a commander issuing orders, but as a mentor sharing wisdom. "The visit of Sergeant Major Thomas has shown us many things," he said. "He has reminded us that respect is earned through action, courage is shown in difficult moments, and leadership is expressed through example. But the most important lesson is this: the values we practice every day, the choices we make, and the respect we show to others define who we are." The guards listened with attention, feeling the weight of his words. They began to understand that their journey was ongoing, that the lessons they had learned were not confined to drills or ceremonies, but applied to every action in life. They reflected on their own growth, the moments of struggle, the choices they had made, and the unity they had developed as a team. Each soldier felt a sense of pride, not only in their skills but in the character they were building, and in the respect they had learned to give and receive. As the sun began to set, painting the courtyard in shades of gold and amber, a quiet moment of recognition occurred. Captain Adrian asked the guards to line up in formation one final time. This time there was no veteran present, no formal ceremony, only the soldiers themselves standing together as a unit. One by one, they saluted, not because they were commanded to, but because they understood the value of respect. The gestures were deliberate, sincere, and unified, a silent acknowledgement of the lessons they had learned and the legacy they honored. The feeling of accomplishment was profound. The young recruits who had once been nervous and uncertain now stood with confidence and pride. They had faced their fears, embraced struggle, and made meaningful decisions. They had learned that excellence was not only measured in performance, but in integrity, courage, and the respect shown to others. The transformation was visible not just in their posture or precision, but in their demeanor, their interactions, and their understanding of their roles as protectors of the palace and representatives of the King's Guard. Captain Adrian addressed his team one final time before the day ended. "What you have achieved goes beyond drills and ceremonies," he said. "You have learned the true meaning of service, respect, and leadership. These lessons will guide you every day in every challenge and in every choice you make. Remember that the strength of the King's Guard is not just in skill, but in character, and that strength will live on through each of you." The guards returned to their barracks as evening settled over the palace, carrying with them the lessons of the past days. The experience had left an imprint on their hearts and minds. They had learned that struggle was not something to fear, that decisions shaped character, and that respect and courage were as important as discipline and training. Captain Adrian felt a quiet sense of pride as he watched his team. He knew that each guard was now stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. Even in private moments, the guards reflected on the impact of Thomas's visit. Some thought about the veteran's calm presence, others about his subtle guidance, and many about the values he had embodied throughout his life of service. They realized that the lessons they had learned would influence not only their professional lives, but their personal growth as well. The story of Sergeant Major Thomas and the experience of honor, struggle, and choice had become a part of who they were, shaping their identity as members of the King's Guard. As night fell over the palace, Captain Adrian took a final walk through the courtyard. The guard's equipment was neatly stored, the grounds quiet and peaceful. He reflected on the journey they had undertaken, from nervous anticipation to struggle, from critical decisions to a profound sense of achievement. He understood that this was more than a story of drills or ceremonies. It was a story of growth, respect, and the enduring impact of mentorship. Thomas's presence, though brief, had created a ripple that would continue to influence the King's Guard for years to come. The next morning, as the sun rose again over the palace, the guards assembled once more, their movements precise yet confident, their expressions calm yet focused. Captain Adrian walked among them, observing their unity and dedication. He knew that the lessons of the past days were now ingrained in their actions, guiding them in every step, salute, and decision. The legacy of Sergeant Major Thomas lived on, not only in memory, but in the choices, character, and dedication of the next generation of the King's Guard. The story of the veteran's visit and the growth of the Guards would be remembered as a defining moment. It was a story of struggle and decision, of courage and respect, of mentorship and leadership. Most importantly, it was a story that showed the power of example, the way one person's integrity, calm guidance, and wisdom could inspire others to rise, learn, and become stronger, not just as soldiers, but as individuals of honor and character. As the day came to a close, Captain Adrian stood at attention, watching his team. They moved as one, disciplined and respectful, yet with a warmth and sincerity that reflected everything they had learned. The courtyard, once a place of drills and nervous anticipation, was now a living testament to growth, respect, and the enduring influence of mentorship. Adrian knew that this experience would stay with the Guards forever, shaping the future of the King's Guard and inspiring every action they would take in service of the kingdom.